Hello and welcome to Camp Xtras. In the 90s and even in the early 2000s, light gun games were a staple of arcades. They commonly came to consoles, but by the days of the 360 and PS3, they seemed to be a forgotten piece of gaming history. The Nintendo Wii seemed like a perfect haven for this genre though. So the console saw a few titles, and one of those was Sega's Ghost Squad. I played through it recently, and today I'll give you some history, lasting impact, and my opinions on it. All footage was captured off of a Wii U, and let's go ahead and hop into this one's history.
Ghost Squad.
Sega has a long history of making light gun games since their early days. In the 90s, this stayed true with hits such as House of the Dead and Virtua Cop. By the early 2000s, arcade cabinets for these games were still being produced, and the Virtua Cop team went to work on a fresh IP. This would end up being Ghost Squad, which was shown in 2004 at an arcade event in Tokyo. It would be released in arcades later in 2004, and what made this shooter notable when compared to other light gun games was its unlockables. The cabinet would have card readers on them, and then you would have an ID badge which would save your progress. In this game, you would unlock costumes, guns, and new routes, and whenever you swiped your card, it would be carried over. After this, there would be a sequel released in arcades in 2007, but also the same year, they would announce that the first game was getting ported to the Nintendo Wii. When asked by IGN why they would port this title over other notable Sega light gun games, they replied that the branching paths and depth would make it work for home video games. On October 23, 2007, Ghost Squad would launch in Japan, and then it would come to North America on November 20th, 2007, and Europe and Australia would get releases in January of 2008. I personally have never played the arcade or home version of this game before. I am interested in Wii light gun conversions, and I thought this would be a good place to start on the channel. So I played through it recently, and let me tell you how I felt about it, starting with the plot and gameplay.
I'm over here!
The enemies are still around. Defeat them.
I'm over here!
We're surrounded.
Usually the plot gets its own section in these reviews, but it's such a non-factor here that I only want to mention it briefly. In this game, you play the team Ghost, the Global Humanitarian Operations Special Tactics Squad, a team that eradicates terrorism and saves hostages. Each level has the main bad guys, but they are over the top and usually have a hostage for you to save. Each mission in this game feels like a pure B-movie with massive action set pieces and locales, and all the plot you need is that there's bad guys and you kill them. It's there, and there's no depth at all. No characters to follow, and the only plot thread is that you are killing people to your next goal. Not that there needs to be a plot here anyway, it at least sets the tone for the game as an action B-movie, and that's all it needs to do. A lack of plot works with the action that they've set up here. The gameplay is just as simple though. You only need a Wiimote in this game, but the zapper is also usable. You point at the screen, and when bad guys pop up, you shoot, and then you aim off screen to reload, and rinse and repeat. There are some other bits here that I'll get into a little bit later, but this is going to be the bulk of your gameplay. It works and it's well done and entertaining. Taking place over 3 missions, the layouts are interesting, and in classic fashion, enemies will pop out of anywhere. It's hectic and fast, and controlling it with the Wiimote works exceptionally well. Aiming and shooting is instinctual, and getting precision shots is easy, and it gets you bonus points. It has a really fast pace, but it really wants you to be accurate at the same time, and I think all of this combines to make something chaotic, and it makes for a shooter that works together. What elevates this a bit more are the deviating paths. Each level has a string of routes you can end up on, which lead you to different experiences, like in the jungle where you can stay back and snipe, or go straight into the action of the base camp. In a level with a house invasion, you can go around back and infiltrate from behind, or you can just barge through the front door. It's a fun and varied way to tackle this game, especially with its biggest issue being that it's only 3 levels. You do have to level up to unlock many of the paths though. Leveling is a huge part of this game because not only do you unlock more paths and levels, but you also unlock new costumes and guns. Guns change the game more than you would expect, where pistols take more precision, but can penetrate through people, or a shotgun which has more of a spread. They do a good job of trying to tackle the lack of content regarding missions with this extra stuff. You get a multiplayer mode with a ninja star mode and a water gun mode, which is silly, but unfortunately, I feel like that only offers a palette swap for the same 3 levels. It is a fun game. It's one of the better light gun games I played, mainly if I played this at arcades. At home though, I think there's so much lacking here that it becomes a disappointing purchase. This game's 3 missions played in a row only take about 30 minutes to beat. So you rush through this game, and then you have to replay it to unlock more stuff. I think it's fun, but grinding out these levels to unlock more is a drag. There are multiple paths, but not enough differences to make them worth doing over and over. It's replayable, sure, but it's the same thing over and over with only small deviations. Nothing really game-changing. It's the same lines spoken over and over, and sometimes you only unlock a new costume, which really doesn't change anything. It never seemed like enough to bother playing this for hours on end over and over. That's the thing, this game offers nothing new enough to make each playthrough unique, meaning that it's just like the arcade game. This system works at the arcade because you only come back every so often to perfect your skills, but at home, when you play this, it's usually over a few hours, and you get your fill after about maybe 2 playthroughs, mainly because it's a grind to even unlock new paths in each level. Sitting, doing the same thing every 30 minutes, I don't find that fun, and it's not worth the price of the game when there's so much more substantial games on the system for the same price. And the game has a lot going for it, it's not a bad game at all. I love that they mix in shooting with action minigames like cutting down claymores to not explode, or punching bad guys that pop up in your face. I also think the level design here is good. The airplane's layering of floors is inspired, and the winding courtyards of the house are cool, though the jungle level has a long forested section that doesn't have any variety that I really dreaded playing. I do think there is a game to like here as far as gameplay goes, and if you played this maybe once a month, I think it would be solid, but it didn't have enough content here in terms of things to do to make it worthwhile for me. One thing to love about this game is the lousy voice acting. Sega always gets a free pass with this stuff because it seems like that's just their style. Every light gun game has people sounding like they don't care. The squad members have barely any enthusiasm, and it's honestly silly. It adds to that B-movie action charm. It feels like the developers are saying, who cares if the plot and voices aren't convincing because this is just fun? And they aren't wrong with that. The soundtrack matches that cheesy B-movie soundtrack feeling with some silly tracks, but it matches the mood well. I really enjoyed the music. I always love when sound comes from the Wiimote as well, and here all of the gunshots come out of the Wiimote along with a rumble every time you fire, and it gives a nice feedback in your hand. Even if the sound is a bit crunchy, it's still nice. It's small things like that that make the sound a more memorable experience. And this game also looks solid. A 2004 arcade game is not a bad choice for the Wii, and I do think it looks clean here. It was a smart choice to retain the 4:3 aspect ratio, and I think the look is a nice arcade classic style. Each environment has a nice art design, and I think there are a lot of differences to make every mission unique, except for the reused enemies, but I do like the Paradise and Ninja mode that does swap them out. That's a bit fun. I'm not saying this is a standout looking Wii game or anything, but it does have a nice, colorful look that I can appreciate. Ghost Squad is undeniably fun. The shooting feels good, and I love the feedback from the audio. It's also not a bad looking game, and I like the varied amount of small mini-games throughout the playthrough. Yet the lack of content just doesn't sit right with me. They should have added missions just to bolster this to make it a true home release. Here, it feels like a cash grab rather than a truly loving update for home. It can be fun for a small amount of time, but even with small touches like new guns and costumes, it just never feels like enough. I only recommend it if you're okay with a game that is lacking on things to do, but is still entertaining every once in a while. On my Wii ranking list, out of the 2 games I've covered so far, this one goes under Endless Ocean. Endless Ocean, though without goals, feels like it has much more to offer and is far more memorable. According to Metacritic, this game got a 69, meaning it got average to mixed reviews. IGN gave it a 7.5, saying that this was a must-play for light gun fans, and it was simply fun. GameSpot gave it a 6.5, saying that it had a 90s charm and an odd appeal. Nintendo Power, in their holiday 2007 issue, gave it a 7 out of 10, saying it was mindless fun. According to VG Charts, this one sold well, estimating that it sold around 700,000 copies, which is insane. I know this game has a following that likes it way more than I did. I see people talk about that despite the lack of levels, there is replay value here. On Backlogged, it holds a 3.3 out of 5 average, with people in the reviews saying that they think this one is highly replayable and lots of fun, and I'm really happy that this one has an audience. But that does wrap it up for today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, it helps me out in the algorithm, subscribe to keep up with the retro content, and if you want specifically retro Xbox content, check out my main channel, Camp Xbox. But I'll see you here next time at Camp Xtras.